All right, guys, today I'm going to share with you the 35 books that I read in the year 2021. Now, 35 might seem like a high book count for some, and for others who read a lot, perhaps a lot more than me, it's not really that impressive. And that's okay. You know, there's a lot of YouTube videos out there about how I read 100 books in a year or 9 books in a week because I'm doing a reading marathon, and that's all good and well and everything, and makes me a little jealous, but the truth is, life is really busy. And last year, my family and I, we built and moved into a new home, and there was a lot of other competing interests that just really demanded our time and attention. So we're spread out pretty thin, as many of you are. But at least I got these read, and I hope that by talking to you about this and just giving you very brief descriptions, it'll pique your curiosity, your interest in reading more and perhaps looking into some of these that I've read for myself. And if it does, then I'll leave a link down below for each and every single one of these. All you have to do is click onto them and you can avail yourself of any one of them if you want to. So let me start with the very first one. I'm going to do these in the order that I finished them. All right. So the very first one was The Girl Who Lived Twice. It was written by David Lagerkrantz. Now, this is the 6th book in the series of books having to do with the girl with a dragon tattoo. Now, if you haven't ever read that book, you need to. They're written by Stieg Larsson. He pumped out 3 books before he passed away of a heart attack. They're phenomenal. It was actually made into a movie with Daniel Craig and Mara Rooney. Great movie, very true to the book. And if you haven't read these books in order, you probably wouldn't get much out of this. But I do recommend The Girl Who Lived Twice if you're already involved in this saga. All right, so that's the first one I read. The second one was, believe it or not, Uncle John's Uncanny Bathroom Reader book. It's the 29th book of theirs. There's just a whole slew of these Uncle John's bathroom readers. And I know it sounds funny to bring it up, but these are great books. If you haven't ever read any of these for yourself, you need to. Everything is broken down into bite-sized pieces. That sounds kind of weird, doesn't it? But everything's broken down into bite-sized pieces. It's chock full of trivia and history and interesting facts. And in fact, a lot of the material, a lot of the content I create, I use illustrations from these books to make points and books similar to this. So check out Uncle John's Bathroom Readers books. And then the third book I finished reading was The Prince by Niccolo Machiavelli. He was an Italian Renaissance man, a political philosopher, a musician, a poet, a playwright, and he was most well known for his treatises on realist political theory. Some of his viewpoints are controversial, and even though it was written, hundreds of years ago, things in politics don't really change much. He just tells you what works and what doesn't work, and why things are carried out the way they do, and how nations should be run. And he doesn't really care what you think. He just tells you how it is. And some of the book was actually hard for me to trudge through because sometimes, I'll be honest, my elevator doesn't always go to the top floor. But I did enjoy this. I did get a few things out of it. But that was the third book that I had finished reading. The fourth book was the Autobiography of Benjamin Franklin. Now, I know that a lot of people have read this. It's not a very big book. It's a short read, actually. It's not an autobiography in the sense that he takes you from the beginning of his life all the way up until, to where he couldn't write anymore. It's not like that. It's just bits and pieces of miscellaneous information about him that he wanted his family to know. It was a very good read. I learned a few things about Benjamin Franklin that I had never known before. I do think it's a must-have on your bookshelf. The fifth one I read was Goodbye Christopher Robin by Anne Thwaite. This was actually made into a movie a couple years ago. I never saw it, but when I was a kid, I did like Winnie the Pooh. When I was a real little kid, that is, obviously. But this book is about A.A. Milne, the author. He was a playwright, and it kind of talks about his successes, his failures, the relationship he nurtured with his son, Christopher Robin, and the eventual fallout between him and his son, which is kind of sad to me, which is why it's titled Goodbye Christopher Robin. Christopher really didn't like the moniker or the association with the book and how it impacted his life. And so it was a good book. I'm glad I read it because I really didn't know anything about the author of Winnie the Pooh himself. So I do recommend that one. The other one I read was a book of positive quotations. Now, this is a big book. It's just a massive book. And it's something that you don't want to read through from cover to cover in several weeks because it's just so heavy. Something you have on your shelf, you pick up from time to time. Quotations are abundant, obviously, and they're there to help encourage your heart and lift your spirit and give you different ways of thinking about things. And quotations are great because they help you develop an interest in the person who said them and also develop maturity along the way. That's really the whole purpose of these things. So the Positive Book of Quotations is one of the best ones I've ever picked up. It's the most extensive book of quotations. The seventh one was The Art of Thinking Clearly by Rolf Dobelli. This book is really about how our biased thinking on any given subject, no matter what we're talking about, holds us back from being our best selves. And it teaches you to think critically and question not only the world around you, but you yourself. And then De Profundus by Oscar Wilde. Great book, but here's the thing. This book was published in 1905. Oscar Wilde, if you don't know, was an Irish poet, playwright, and author, and he was imprisoned on charges of homosexuality. But if anyone thinks it's as simple as that, it's not. He's very bitter. This book is actually a letter that he wrote to his lover who threw him under the bus, and he pours out his house. De Profundus actually means out of the depths. And he puts all of his emotion on paper. And what I love about this book or this letter, however you want to think of it, is that in the end, he tells you that prison was actually good for him and that he actually got something out of it. It taught him how to live a better life and how to be happier. And that's something I can really respect and get behind. So I would recommend picking that up. Now, The Hour of Fate was the ninth one. It's the subtext to it is subtitle to it is Theodore Roosevelt, J.P. Morgan, and the Battle to Transform American Capitalism. If you like history, if you like history, if you like anything to do with Wall Street, railroads, Northern security schemes, and union strikes, this is a great book to read. It's written by Susan Burfield. The 10th book I picked up or finished reading was Tactics by Greg Koukl. Greg Koukl is a Christian speaker and a writer and debater. He's very good at what he does. When objections are made to Christianity and assertions are made that it just couldn't possibly be true and all this other stuff, he's really good at combating it. He's really good at coming back with a response. And he teaches Christians how to respond to negative confrontations, how to handle conversations that otherwise we might find ourselves uncomfortable in. And it's much more simple than what we might think. He helps really put things in perspective. And this book not only helped me in discussing my faith with others, but in just having, conflicts within relationships themselves and how to navigate them. All right. So it's a great book. If you're not a Christian, you might not be interested in it. But if you are, I would definitely recommend picking that up. The 11th one I picked, I really like this one. It's called The Catalog of Shipwrecked Books. Christopher Columbus and the Quest to Build the World's Biggest Library. It's written by Edward Wilson Lee. Hernando Colon was the illegitimate son of Christopher Columbus, but he went with his father on his journeys, and it does reveal a lot about Christopher Columbus. You don't read in history books. In fact, most of what is being taught in school about Christopher Columbus is actually wrong. And but Hernando Colon was very interested in books, and even from childhood, he wanted to really develop the world's biggest library. So he traveled all over the world with his father and collected all these books, went to all these different bookstores. And it's just talking about his journey. If you're a book lover, if you love libraries, you're going to be very interested in this book. The 12th book was called Chase Darkness With Me by Billy Jensen. Billy Jensen was, this falls into the true crime category, by the way. He was somebody who wrote crime books or crime novels or something like that. I'm not remembering completely accurately, but he became interested in solving true crimes that were still open on the books, or maybe perhaps even closed. He would open them back up, and he wanted to find the people who committed these murders and bring closure to families, to loved ones, to law enforcement agencies. And he did it by way of using social media. In the book, he tries to get people interested in taking their armchair detective presumptions and potential and getting them involved in doing the same thing he's doing. He shows you how to do it. Now, he did a lot of this using his own time, energy, and money. And it's really quite compelling. And after you read it, you're gonna question whether you should be doing this or not. You're gonna think to yourself, maybe I can get involved with this, which is the whole point of the book. Now, the 13th book I read was called Bad Monkey by Carl Hiaasen. Carl Hiaasen is a native Floridian. He writes books, kind of humorous, fiction, crime books. And I had never read one before. I'd heard about him, and so I picked this up at the library, and it's quite fun to read. The book has to do with Andrew Yancey. He's a Key West detective, kind of rough around the collar, and I guess he acquires this freezer. There's a amputated arm inside of it, and he's trying to figure out where this come from. Takes it to a hot medical examiner, has a love relationship with her, takes a trip down to the Bahamas and tries to solve this case. Now, if you're wondering where Bad Monkey comes from, in the book, it's supposed to be the monkey who's actually in the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. Okay, but it is funny. It's not a comedy, but it's laced with a lot of humor, and it's a fun read. So, I'll probably be reading more of his. The 14th book I read was Atomic Habits by James Clear. It's an easy and proven way to build good habits and break bad ones. I really appreciate this book a lot because I align a lot of my values and approaches to things with what he's talking about in this book. It's about incrementally stepping toward what you want and getting what you want by developing good habits and eliminating other ones, just as it says in the subtitle. But, a lot of people really haven't thought about it in ways that he's explained. And this is a guy who's gone through, really big trials and tribulations in his life. So he's got a lot of authority to speak on this matter. Atomic Habits has received a lot of press, and I can understand why. I do believe it's a must-have on your bookshelf. And then the 15th book was Killing a Mob, written by Bill O'Reilly and Martin Dugard. It's about the fight against organized crime in America. What I loved about this book is the only book I read of Bill O'Reilly's Killing series. He's got Killing Jesus, Killing Patton, a number of other ones I haven't read that I've always been interested in. But this really, I like gangster books, but this was a great book. Not hard to read, easy to pick up, a little bit harder to put down. And it's just a fun ride to take and really informative if you want to know more about gangsters in America. The 6th book I read was called Breaking the News, Exposing the Establishment Media's Hidden Deals and Secret Corruption. This is a great book. It's written by Alex Marlowe. He's the editor-in-chief of Breitbart. Listen, if you're somebody who's not interested in facts, you're not going to like this book. If you already have a narrative that you're holding on to because it makes you feel good about the world and the way it is, you're not going to like this book. But for people like me and others who want to know the truth and just want it raw and want to know exactly how it is, you need to put your nose into this. It's great. He's not just speaking off the cuff. He gives you data and he backs up everything he says. And very, very, I know I probably used the word too much, but very compelling. I love this book. And so the 17th book I read was falls into the fiction category, Without Remorse. You might know of the movie with Michael B. Jordan in it. I actually haven't seen it. I got the book because of a promotion that a beer product company was doing had to do with this movie. And I thought, well, I'll read the book and then I'll watch the movie. The funny thing about the book was that I had judged it by its cover. It's a good book, full of action, written by John Clancy. It's the first John Clarke novel. But when I picked it up and started reading it, I had the image of Michael B. Jordan in my head. Here's the thing. It took me a little bit, but I realized, as I thought it took place in present day, John Clarke in the novel is a white man right out of the Vietnam era, and everything is dated, going back. The book was written in the 90s. It takes place in the early 70s. So I had to do some adjustment in my thinking. It really kind of threw me off at first, but the book was full of action. Now, there was a couple times that I wanted to take the character, John Clarke, and go, what are you thinking? I don't know. Some of the things he did in a romantic way, I thought were kind of stupid, but anyway, it was still a great, fun ride to take. The 18th book I read was called Contagious, Why Things Catch On. This is actually written by a marketing professor from the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania. His name is Jonah Berger. He helps you explain why certain things go viral and others don't. Here's one of the interesting factoids that I still remember from this book, because I do YouTube, and that is that less than half, or about 50% of YouTube videos get 500 views or less, which is most of my videos. But only 1/3 of 1% get 1 million views or more. It shows you what the stakes are. It shows you what the odds are. But he tells you why certain things catch on, others don't. And he kind of helps. He tries to help you along the way and tell you how you can tweak your approach and your process. Now, the 19th book I finished reading was called Cakes and Ale by W. Somerset Maugham. Without going into a long description of the book, just let me tell you, anything that W. Somerset Maugham wrote is just the best. He's my favorite fiction literature writer of all time. He is, nobody tops him. Just pick up anything by W. Somerset Maugham and let yourself take that journey down humanity's road, and just let's find out what it does to you, because nothing resonates with me more than his writings. Cakes and Ale was a phenomenal book. I got started reading W. Somerset Maugham after I watched the movie The Painted Veil, and then I read the book, and oh man, it was so good. In fact, if you haven't seen that movie, The Painted Veil, watch it, because it's just like the book. Great book. Now, the 20th book I read was Chopin's Piano. It's written by Paul Kildare. It's about the search for the instrument that transformed music. If you like Chopin, if you like classical music, if you like music in general, if you're interested in history, this is a great book. I love Chopin. I had an idea of reading biographies and all the different classical composers. I read a book on Tchaikovsky, which was a really good book, really odd. But this book on Chopin was not just about Chopin, but about the instrument itself. And I learned a lot about him, and it was just a great book. I talked about this on a live stream with George Bruno one time. Now, the 21st book was Never Split the Difference. Negotiating as if your life depended on it. It's by Chris Voss. Chris Voss was the top FBI hostage negotiator in the FBI. I don't know if I said that right, but anyway, he was. All right, he has a lot to say. I found him on YouTube by just happenstance, and I went down the rabbit hole, and he is very good at telling you about how to, negotiate, whether it's your relationships or it's a business deal or whatever it is you want in life. One of the things I thought was interesting was he talked about how important it is to get a no from whoever it is you're talking to. And I've always thought that a yes is what I wanted, but he tells you why getting a no from somebody is what you really want, among many other things. And this is a top-selling book, and there's a lot of reasons why. So get this and make sure it's on your bookshelf. Also, I read Brave New World. That was my 22nd book. Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. This is probably on every high school must-read list, but I never did up until, just months ago. Wow. It was just one of the, This book is it's almost prophetic, all right? It's kind of a utopian / dystopian book. It takes place in the future in New London. It's supposed to be the biggest city in the world. And it's supposed to be this utopian society. And the way that it has achieved utopia is they have developed this drug called soma. If everybody takes it, and you're compelled to do so by the government, if everybody takes it, everything's gonna be okay. And if you don't take it, well, you're the strange one. Sound familiar? This book blew my mind. It's one of the best books I've ever read. Take my word for it. Just get the book by Aldous Huxley. Okay. Then I read, where am I at here? I think I lost my way here. No, I didn't. Okay. Then I read Lives of the Stokes by Ryan Holiday. Some of you may be familiar with his book, The Obstacle's the Way, which was a game changer for me, by the way. Okay, so I've been reading some of Ryan Holiday's books, and the last one I picked up was Lives of the Stoke. This is a bestseller also. It talks about the art of living from Zeno to Marcus Aurelius. So if you like philosophy, if you like Stoic philosophy, you're really going to like this book. The 24th book I read was The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. I wanted to read this book because I had a conversation with a couple guys one day who told me that this book was associated or was connected somehow to serial killers. I'm like, why? I didn't know why. So they told me that they didn't know either. I said, well, I'm going to read it and find out. I know that it's considered classic literature. I know it's controversial. In courts, there's a lot of questions about whether it should even be allowed to be published anymore. But I picked up the book, and I still don't have that question answered as to why it's connected to serial killers somehow. But I will tell you, it's about teenage angst and rebellion. It's a 16-year-old boy. What's his name? Holden Caulfield. And he's really struggling with his identity and figuring out, where he wants to go in life or how he wants to, what ladders he wants to climb. And he's just really struggling with so many things. It's very relatable if you can remember back that far. For me, it's quite a ways back now. But I do remember when I was 16 years old, that was the most turbulent time of my life. So I get the character. I understand him. And so Catcher in the Rye was just a great book. The 25th book was The Thomas Sowell Reader. I don't know if you know who Thomas Sowell is. He's an African-American philosopher, economist, photographer. I don't know if you would call him a political scientist or not. But anyway, here's the thing. I don't have many heroes in life. But Thomas Sowell is my hero. I have just the biggest respect for this man. He is willing to say what most people will not, and he has the authority to do so. He has traveled the world, done so much research, and can tell you why certain civilizations make it and others don't, and why race or racism is not the problem. And he backs everything up. He does not care what you think. Liberals and progressives do not like him at all. And he doesn't just pull punches with he doesn't pull punches with conservatives either. He doesn't really care what anybody thinks. He just tells you what the numbers say, what research shows, and what history bears out. And it's a lot of stuff you'll never hear anywhere else. But this book is really is composed of a lot of different essays and articles he's written over the past 30 years. One of the best books I've ever read. The Thomas Sowell Reader. Get that. All right. Now, The Island was another book written by Aldous Huxley. When I read Brave New World, I was so impressed by it that I said, I'm going to go out and buy any other book I can find of his on the shelf. Well, I found 3 other ones, and I'm going to talk about them now. The Island was Aldous Huxley's last book. I didn't think it was a great read. It was a little, whatever, It's okay. It's okay, Some people are going to like it, some people are not. I think it's just going to be either or. The Doors of Perception was another one I read by him, and I didn't like this book at all because it's about his experimentation with it's about how he experimented with drugs or experimental drugs. Let's just put it this way. He would have been a great guest on Joe Rogan's podcast. Joe Rogan would have loved this guy. But I thought it was strange. I thought it was weird. Actually kind of dangerous. but I didn't really like the book at all. I got nothing out of it, which is odd. I really thought it was odd. The other book I had picked up by him was called The Divine Within. This one was actually really good. How Huxley can be all over the place, I don't know. But the Divine Within, I don't agree with his theology. However, he's very accurate about a lot of things. He says things that I would think that only the most deep thinking philosophers would ever come up with. So I do recommend The Divine Within, but you'd have to like that kind of thing, like theology and philosophy. The other one I read was called The Storyteller's Secret, From TED Speakers to Business Legends, Why Some Ideas Catch On and Others Don't. This is, it's written by Carmine Gallo. He's basically telling you why developing the talent or the skill for telling stories is absolutely important for success in just about every area of life, especially for communicating. I mean, that's the whole point of telling stories, is to communicate. But he tells you how to develop a story, how to formulate it, and what you can expect from it, and what people really want to hear. And it's going to help you succeed in whatever endeavor you decide to take up. Then I also read The Contagion Myth. This was an interesting read. It's written by Thomas Cohen and Sally Fallon Morell. They're both doctors. The subtitle is Why Viruses Are Not the Cause of the Disease. Listen, this is a very good book. I'm not saying I buy everything hook, line, and sinker, but he does go into the history of vaccines. And he says some things in there that are actually backed up by many other sources that you have to sit up and pay attention to and go, I really wonder. I'm not so sure that he's right about some things, but other things, are documented to be a truth. So he's not saying he knows everything about what causes certain viruses, but he makes you sit up and pay attention. I found this to be the only book of its kind on the shelf, and there might be a reason for that. But I would recommend picking this up because it'll give you another way of looking at things that are going on in our world right now. Then another book I read was Intellectuals and Race by, once again, Thomas Sowell. Another book that's a critique of the intellectual's destructive role in shaping ideas about race in America, and about how we oftentimes put intellectuals on a pedestal, but they're actually the ones who undermine the very fabric of our society in many cases. When slavery was abolished in the late 1880s in all nations of the world, even though it still goes on, by law, by definition, it was abolished. What replaced it was despotic totalitarianism, and the people at the helm of all of this are the intellectuals, and they act as the third-party surrogates who try to make decisions for all of us out here. And he's very good at showing how they have created division rather than unity. And so the 32nd book I read was called White Slaves, African Masters. This is a book compiling 9 different narratives of people who were imprisoned by Barbary pirates from northern Africa. And what a lot of people don't know is that there's actually more Caucasians who were ever enslaved than there were Africans throughout history. And this is a part of history that no one will ever talk about. Okay, and these were the Muslim pirates who were cruising up and down the coast of different nations, including the United States. Well, it was before that, when they were trying to form the colonies, they were actually kidnapping the people who were coming over here to be colonists and taking them over there and enslaving them for sometimes many years until they could be ransomed by their governments. It has a lot to do, our history has a lot to do with that, where Thomas Jefferson is concerned, and the forming of the Marines and the Navy. So that's a fantastic read. And then I read, this is actually a reread for me. It's called The Making of an American. I read this book years ago. It's written by Jacob Riis. Jacob Riis was a shaker and a mover. Like I don't know if maybe I shouldn't use that term because maybe it really means something different. But he was somebody who made things happen. He was a Dutch immigrant. I can't remember what year he was born. It was in the mid-1800s. He left Denmark because he was in love with a girl he grew up with in school. He wanted to marry her. And this is all true, by the way. He wanted to marry her, but he came from a different class than she did. She was upper class. He was lower class. His father wouldn't let her marry him. So he came to America to make something of himself, became very acquainted with homelessness. And then he, as he took on different jobs, he vowed that he was going to reconstitute or abolish a lot of the tenements that were there in New York. And he helped develop better living situations, schooling, playgrounds, and all sorts of things for the people of New York who were very poor at that time. Just did great things. But the book is really not only about his life, but it's a love story about his love for Denmark, his love for his wife, his love for our country, America, for the people, for the poor. He's a very compassionate man, but The Making of an American is one of the best books I've ever read. Now, another one I read, it was a reread, it was called Thunderstruck. Now, this was kind of an unintentional reread. Thunderstruck is written by Eric Larson. Anything Eric Larson wrote is a phenomenally good book. But Thunderstruck has two parallel narratives, one about Marconi and another about a man named Harvey Holly Crippen who killed his wife. And he converges the stories to show how the emergence of wireless technology really helped solve the crime of, who killed Crippen's wife, or where was she? She was reported missing and to be living in America, and through happenstance, through coincidence, they find out that he murdered her. I'm not going to tell you anymore. It's a good story. It's just really good history. Thunderstruck or anything else by Eric Larson is a great book. The last one I finished reading in 2021, was a book by, I think his name is pronounced Vaclav Smil. It's called Numbers Don't Lie. He helps you understand the world through numbers. Like he has very short chapters, 2 and 3 pages long, easy read. Some of it still goes over my head though, but he has questions like, he poses questions like, is air travel really better? Is it really safer than riding in cars? He helps you understand whether things are as bad in the world as you might assume them to be, or maybe they're better. And he just takes an economist's point of view on everything, and it's a fun read. Anyway, those are my 32 books, 35 books. I lost track. Those are the 35 books I read in 2021. I hope that is giving you some ideas and made you want to read a little bit more. But anyway, guys, I appreciate your time. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Have a great day. Bye-bye.